Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Secretary Bessent calls out Bernie Sanders for not only knowing nothing about tax policy, but for not knowing what's actually in the big beautiful bill. Let's dive in.
Do you think it's a coincidence, given the large number of billionaires in the Trump administration, that this particular piece of legislation would provide $235 billion in tax breaks to the top 0.2% by expanding the exemptions in the estate tax?
Senator, I will tell you that when the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed, my tax rate went up.
Well, I don't know your exact situation, but I can tell you. Tell me about how many people do you think are in the top 0.2%?
Sorry?
Number of people in the top 0.2% who would benefit from this particular $235 billion tax break?
Well, I know the top 10% is
Right.
now paying 7%
That's not the
of
question.
the total tax.
My question is, why do you think at a time of unprecedented income and wealth inequality, when people like yourself economically have never, ever had it so good, why do you think it's a good idea to cut Medicaid for low-income and working-class people by $700 billion to give $235 billion in tax breaks to the very, very, very richest people in this country, perhaps a few hundred families? Please justify that and tell me about that.
Well, Senator, I don't know, but the Democrats had the trifecta, and there was no tax increase or wealth tax on billionaires. You choose.
I'm not talking about a tax.
You chose not to
Mr.
do
Bessent,
that,
I am
so
not
you
talking
can tell
about
me.
a wealth tax. Explain. A few hundred of the wealthiest families in this country, $235 billion tax break. Explain to the American people why you think that's a great idea.
I think that this will increase small businesses substantially. That most small businesses, they are...
Has zero to do, come on, you're smarter than that. This is the top 0.2%. This is not a mom and pop store. These are multi-billionaires, and the savings go to their kids after they pass away. This is nothing more than a gift to billionaires in this country.
Well, sir, that's just not correct, because the top 10% paid a bigger share of taxes after TCJA.
I'm talking about one provision in this. I don't want to argue with you about taxes in general. One provision, few hundred families, $235 billion in tax breaks. You can't justify that because morally it is totally unjustifiable. Let me ask you another question. If you guys want to cut $1 trillion in Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, the estimate from CBO, I believe, is that over 15 million people lose their health insurance. Yale University and the University of Pennsylvania estimated that when you throw that many low-income and working-class people off of health care, some 50,000 people a year will die. Tell me why you think it's a good idea to give tax breaks to billionaires and allow 50,000 low-income and working-class people to die unnecessarily?
Senator, first of all, that's overstated by 5.1 million. That is not attributed to this bill. It is simply...
It's a combination. That's true.
No. You all had a scheduled expiration of Obamacare subsidies, and you did not extend that when you were in charge. 5.1 million. 1.4 million illegal aliens on Medicaid.
All right,
and there are work requirements. And our goal is to get more money to children and mothers.
Really? Your goal is to get more money to children, and working people. Really, come on. Do you know how many people, and I was surprised to hear this, I don't know if you know it or not, how many people lose their jobs every year, quit, or get fired or whatever? Do you have any idea?
Well, there's something called the quits rate, and so when the job market is strong, more people quit.
But yeah, I was surprised that I just researched this. I don't know. Do you happen to know?
I don't know the number.
I was surprised. Would it be shocking to you? It was to me. 20 million people leave their jobs a year. Doesn't shock you, right? It's a big labor force, right?
Yep.
So somebody leaves the job, maybe they move, maybe something happens in their lives, right? We have a lot of transition in the labor market, correct?
Maybe they get a better job.
Right, exactly. Maybe they do. Or maybe they have to stay home, their wife gets sick, whatever, we don't know. But 20 million people lose their jobs in a given year, leave their jobs in a given year. Are those people lazy? What happens when I leave my job and maybe I have to move to another state to take care of my ill mother, and I desperately need Medicaid? Am I too lazy now to be able to get Medicaid?
I think that's a mischaracterization of the work requirement.
Really? Well, I'm not quite so sure it is.
Well, Bernie, maybe hit dogs are barking here, because when it comes to laziness and work requirements, I think the only time you have ever had any dirt under your fingernails is when you're playing horseshoes outside of one of your many lake houses. Ever notice how Bernie used to talk about the millionaires and the billionaires, and now it's only the billionaires? Funny, ever since he became one, all of a sudden he's changed his rhetoric just the least little bit. You didn't think we'd notice, but we did, Bernie. We did. And so we're not buying any of this rhetoric here, and Scott Bessent is doing a fantastic job just blocking him off every time, because let's be honest, Bernie Sanders is a sitting senator, and maybe if he came from a working class background and actually held a real job, he wouldn't have lost the 2016 primary. He might have been able to win, even though, Democrats don't believe in democracy. They love their superdelegates, which are unelected in their own party primary positions. But I think we're getting off in the weeds here. The reality is Bernie Sanders does not really know what he's talking about. For a sitting senator to say, "I just researched this," tells me he doesn't really know what he's talking about. The only time this dude has anything of value to say to anybody is when he's talking about cutting taxes for billionaires. That's the only thing he knows to talk about, because the whole left side of the political spectrum is based on the idea of envy. It is based on the idea that I want what you have. I want what you earned. You earned something? Well, to quote Barack Obama, you didn't build that. It is envious to be a leftist. You cannot be on the left without wanting something that someone else has created. Let's be honest, every now and then Ayn Rand got it right, particularly when it comes to the fountainhead. But if I'm Bernie Sanders, I would actually be looking at the big beautiful bill as a whole and not be focused on tax breaks for billionaires. All right, this is what I would focus on if I were he. The bill would slash $330 billion from student loan spending over the next 10 years. An income-based repayment assistance plan will be the new standard for student loans. It also changes the Pell Grant program for low-income students by increasing the number of required credits per semester. So in other words, Bernie Sanders could be out there advocating for students who might need a little bit of help with their student loans, even though I'm in the camp of, if you were dumb enough to take out these loans, you must pay them back. All right, I paid back mine. I got lucky with my student loans. I paid them back years ago. It wasn't great, and the education I got was honestly subpar. But you'd think that Bernie Sanders would talk about that, because that very sort of rhetorical point got him to where he was in political stardom. Then an income-based repayment assistance plan is basically saying that we're completely reworking how we're going to help people with student loans. Maybe Bernie would ask that question and try to get to the bottom of that a little bit more, instead of just researching one random off moment about Medicaid. And then changes to the Pell Grant system. You might want to look into that too, Bernie. But instead of doing any of that, he goes to the only political talking point he knows how, talking about how wealthy people make money and how nearly every time we cut their tax rate, we increase the amount of taxes we bring in. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, always have these weird numbers that, if you cut their taxes, we're going to lose money. Well, what happened under Reagan is we cut those taxes, and the amount of money we made not only covered the taxes, but actually paid a little bit more. It happened again in the mid-90s when the Newt Gingrich, Bill Clinton battles were going on. It happened again under W in the 2000s that Barack Obama himself continued to keep in action. He kept the Bush tax cuts. And that same thing happened again when the acolyte of Obama himself, President Joe Biden, kept the Trump and Paul Ryan tax cuts. The Democrat Party secretly knows that these tax cuts work nearly every single time. And the only reason that they're complaining about it is so they can score some extra political points for anyone who's not really paying attention. Well, most Americans are now in tune. Most Americans have now realized that the Democrats have no idea what they're talking about. Bernie Sanders is certainly in this camp here. And instead of criticizing a sitting Secretary of the Treasury, saying, hey, how are you going to reform student loans? Or, hey, how are we actually going to move forward with Medicaid cuts? He's talking about, well, are you really going to help people with Medicaid? And it turns out yes. And are you cutting billionaires' taxes? Instead of focusing on much more pressing issues that might actually push the needle. The Democrat Party does not know what they're doing, for which I am indeed thankful. Bernie Sanders only knows to sing one note, and Scott Bessent is just sitting there. I don't like when politicians and even the cabinet members get a little bit smug, but he's kind of earned the right, because Bernie has no idea what he's actually talking about, and Bessent's just sitting there going, bless your heart. You don't really know, do you? Because that's the truth of the matter. Bernie Sanders has no idea what he's actually talking about. He only speaks the language of envy. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.